together this morning into order. Today is Tuesday, March 5th. I apologize for my tardiness. Council Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Calling the roll, Ms. Brown.
Here.
Mr. Gallagher. Mr. Gallagher is absent at the moment. Mr. Jones.
Here.
Mr. Miller.
Here.
Ms. Conwell. Here. We have a quorum.
Much, and I understand Councilman Gallagher has another meeting that he's in, so if we could make a motion to excuse his absence for this meeting. Okay, it's been moved in second, although it's not required. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, we're going to take our agenda, minutes. Do we have public comment?
No, no one is signed in.
Okay, and minutes from the February 19th meeting. I'll make a motion to approve them. Is there a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. Are there any questions, comments, or concerns? There being none, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, let's just move on to our agenda. We're going to go a little bit of out of order and start with item C. If you'll read that into the record, please.
Resolution number 2019-0056, confirming the county executive's reappointment of Karen Gabriel Moss to serve on the Greater Cleveland Regional Transit Authority Board of Trustees for an unexpired term ending 2/28/2022.
All right, I'm going to turn it over to our Regional Director, Michelle Pomerantz, if you'll give us a little bit of background about this particular position.
Yes.
Great, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councilwoman. The county executive is respectfully requesting this committee to hear his reappointment of Ms. Karen Gabriel Moss for a 3-year term, starting 3/1/2019, which were a couple days past, and extending to February 28, 2022. This would complete our confirmations of appointments to the RTA, since last fall we did appoint and you confirmed Justin Bibb as well as Terry Joyce. So this would conclude the county's appointments. And to that end, Ms. Moss is here today, as well as a representative from RTA, Mr. Jose Feliciano, who is the Director of Government Affairs, to speak on any other questions regarding the RTA.
Are there any questions for Director Pomerantz regarding this appointment from the committee? All right, there being none, I'll ask Ms. Moss if you will step forward and please state your name for the record, and thank you for being so patient again this morning with my tardiness.
Excuse me, Ms. Moss, can you press the button on the microphone, please?
There you go. Good morning, and for those of you who have not met, I'm Karen Gabriel Moss, and I would like to thank the committee for giving me this opportunity to come before you and tell you a little about myself and my relationship to RTA. I've been practicing immigration law in the city of Cleveland for 25 years. I've lived in the Tremont neighborhood of Cleveland since 1989. I live there with my husband, John Moss, and our daughter, Gabriel. She's graduating from college this year, and unlike many of her friends, I'm proud to say she's coming back to Cleveland to give back. She was one of the reasons I initially applied for the GC RTA board in 2011. At that time, she rode RTA to school. I was first appointed to the RTA in 2011, and has been my honor to serve on this board since then. Although we have had some serious bumps this last year, overall, the board has done a good job in using its resources that we have. I understand that the importance of public transportation. I personally use RTA as a piece of my transportation portfolio. I do not own a car. I personally, so although I do not use RTA exclusively, it is part of my transportation portfolio. For example, I even used the trolley to come here this morning. But more importantly, I'm applying to be reappointed to the board because the board is in the midst of a number of important projects that I am involved in, including appointing a new GM CEO, revising the bylaws, and the pillar studies, as well as some land transitions that we're in the process of completing. As I have been very active in these initiatives, I want you to see them through completion. Currently, I'm the chair of the Audit, Safety, Compliance, and Real Estate Committee. This is the committee that's been very busy this year, and this is the one who actually oversaw the audit committee or the audit department's investigation of our former president and referred this to the prosecutors. I am also the chair of the Ad Hoc GM CEO Search Committee. I'm a member of the Bylaws Committee Review. And I also sit on several other committees, including the Nomination Operational Planning Committee and the Governance Committee. A couple of these committees are in the midst of very important work that would be disrupted if I were not reappointed. As the chair of the GM CEO search, I am the liaison to the committee and the sole person that our search firm communicates through. I am also on the Ad Hoc Bylaws Committee. Since Sonny Nardi resigned in August, I have been on the committee as the county's representative. Our bylaws had not been revamped only in small ways in many, many years. And one of the examples that we have done already is we have separated the GM CEO position from the Secretary Treasurer position. It was important to do this before the position was posted so that the new individual that will be running will know exactly what their job is. And we didn't want to change it once somebody was there. This morning, that description is being presented to the External Affairs Committee and is open for public comment. Because I'm currently such an active board member, I would like the opportunity to finish these projects at this important juncture. I could go on, but I'm going to let you all ask the questions that you have for me.
Thank you very much, and welcome back. So this will be your third appointment, your third
Yeah,
term.
my first term was an unexpired term of 2, and then I think this is my third.
Okay. All right, I'll open it up to my colleagues, starting with Councilwoman Conwell.
Good morning, and thank you, Chairwoman. To Ms. Moss, I don't have any specific questions. I do want to say that the Clevelanders for Public Transit did want to, since me and Councilman Miller worked on a transportation overhaul, of getting more funding for the RTA, wanted to have someone that was a regular rider from the board. So if you've heard anything out there, I don't want this to shadow your appointment in any way. We have a responsibility to listen to everyone. It just happened to be that when they came, you were being reappointed. And I do kind of agree with County Exec Budish that since you're in such major work with RTA at the time, that is why he is reappointing you. So I just wanted to let you know that from my behalf, I do agree with Clevelanders for Public Transit that there needs to be some regular riders that are on the board. And it came out in that your daughter, as well as yourself, which I don't think Clevelanders for Public Transit really understood, that you were a regular rider. So it kind of fits both tasks, what they were requiring and the work that you do. So, and I also wanted to say that, and I shared this with Michelle, that out of any of the appointees that have been appointed to boards, you have never missed one of these meetings, and I thank you for that.
Oh, thank you.
All right, are there any other questions, comments, or concerns?
Madam Chair.
Councilman Miller.
Madam Chair, Ms. Moss, thank you very much for your dedication and service and willingness to serve for another term. I have specific questions. And the first one is, what are you looking for in a GM or CEO?
I want someone who's experienced. I want someone who's dedicated to transportation and that would make a commitment to not staying just a couple of years. We are lucky in the sense that this is actually a coveted position because we're a multimodal, but we're not the largest. So some people could be using this as a stepping stone. So I would like to have someone in there that's committed and that has a track record and has the ability to communicate the vision to the public, but also is willing to work with our appointing authorities.
And what is RTA's advocacy strategy for trying to reverse the decades-long old public policy in state government of not funding very much at all for public transportation?
I agree that is a huge challenge, and it doesn't help, and not to make this too political, but the Republican administrations have not been particularly good for public transit, and we need to continue to advocate. We are one of the lowest funded states for public transit. And when we talk about the gas tax, which is really unfortunate, that it specifically says that it can only go for roads and bridges. So an increase in the gas tax will not help us. So really the strategy is to only lobby, but I'm not sure. We do have some voices from the region. Mr. Dolan happens to be someone who does support public transit, but I am not going to pretend it's going to be an easy haul, and I am slightly pessimistic about it.
There are some people that say that despite the constitutional language that the gas tax could be used for public transit because of public transit's role in mitigation of congestion, which would aid the road and bridge system. Do you think that interpretation is possible, or do you think that's a stretch?
For the committee's benefit, I am a lawyer, but I'm not a constitutionalist. I am an immigration attorney. I think it's definitely worth exploring. I think that there would be pushback. I mean, it's certainly something that the urban communities could bond together, and I would first explore it, but I would have a feeling that would be something that would end up in the Supreme Court making that interpretation. And given the composition of the Supreme Court, I don't know how likely a good ruling would be. But it certainly is worth exploring.
Am I correct that because of the loss of Medicaid sales tax revenue, which had about a $20 million per year impact for RTA, that RTA currently has an unsustainable imbalance of revenues and expenditures for operations?
Yes, I definitely think that RTA is going to have to look for other sources of revenue. Much like the county, I think we both took tremendous hits. And of course, the easy, obvious place to look is to increase of the sales tax, but I don't believe we're there yet. I think that RTA has a lot of work to do of regaining public trust. And in addition, I think it would need to have the support of county council, city council, the county exec, and the mayor of Cleveland, because that's the only way that any kind of tax would be increased. And so if it were put before the board right now, it's not something I would vote for, but I do think that maybe in the long term, it might be something we have to do.
The RTA also has the authority to ask for a property tax, as well as an increase in the sales tax. Is that being given any consideration, or is the thinking clearly in the direction that if it were necessary to make a request to the voters, that it would be in the form of an increase in the sales tax?
So about a year ago, we started to consider and looking at what all our options were. And we were exploring that, and perhaps even maybe some more creative ways, like is there a way that we could get sales tax on parking? Because that's actually directly affected how inexpensive it is to park in downtown Cleveland puts an effect on people using public transportation. So, and as we see, raising fares really causes a decrease. So that was some ideas that we had and we were exploring. And to be honest, we got sidetracked from that because of other issues. But I think that this would be something with the new CEO that we would go back to explore to see if there are maybe some other creative ways of taxing or getting increased revenues rather than just either a property tax or a sales tax.
Given the current trends of revenues and expenses, how long can RTA maintain the status quo using reserves until you come to the point where you're going to have to make a decision on this?
Right, well, I mean, the problem with decisions is if we do nothing, what will eventually happen will be that we would have to cut services, and that also lowers ridership. So I think the last thing I heard, we are probably like within a year of having to make some other decision.
So if you're going to go with an issue on the ballot, you don't have to do it this year, but you might have to do it next year.
Correct.
Okay. Well, these are not easy times for public transportation, and I would just express my strong support for how important public transportation is for the economic and social well-being of our community. It's a centerpiece. We all need it, but particularly those on low and in moderate income. It's a matter of survival, of getting to jobs, getting to medical appointments, and providing a lot of other functions. I'll just ask about one other thing that I know you're working on, which is we've been talking about the operations, but there's also the issue about the rail cars and the capital expense, and can you give us a little update on what the issues are related to that and where we stand as toward some kind of a resolution on that question?
So we have some of the oldest trains in any public transportation system. They're all the green lines from the 70s, and the green and the blue line, light rail, and their parts we cannot get. So when something breaks, we're taking them out of unused cars, and we're also manufacturing them individually. So the parts just aren't available for our trains. So we are going to have to get a new train, and I have to say that every year I raise that, since I've been on the board, saying that we can't just keep kicking the can on this, that we need to start putting money aside. And it seems every time we put money aside, some emergency has happened that we have raided it. So I think we need a little bit, if we can remember back to Al Gore when he was going to have a lockbox for Social Security, I think we do need to have a lockbox for our rolling stock. But part of that is under Dr. Cavers, he is our acting CEO, GM. Right now, he is meeting with federal people, including Sherrod Brown's office, and he's going to go testify before before Congress about the need and the funding. And so, we're hoping that there may be some budget money for us to get some new rail cars. So, because it's a huge chunk of money, and I can't remember the exact amount, but it's something that cannot come out of our ordinary budget.
Am I correct that we have two different size rail cars?
That's correct. The red line is heavy rail, and the green and blue line that splits in Shaker Square is light rail.
Are we giving any thought to the next iteration being a single size rail car for the whole system so that we don't have to maintain parts and do repairs on two different kinds of rail cars?
I think that would have been really smart had that's the way it was, but remember, they were both two private, they were private railway, and that would require us replacing track. So I think that if we were redesigning the whole system and we could start from scratch, I would think that, but I would think it would be very hard for us to do that now because we would have to replace all the track, or at least one line's track.
I have heard it can be done without replacing track, but I'm not an expert. I just throw that out.
I can double check, and I'd be happy to email you on that, but it's my understanding is that it would take a lot of retrofitting.
Okay.
But I will follow up on that. That's easy. I'm going back after this. We were at committee meetings, and I'm taking a break, and I'm going back. So I can ask that of, by the way, Dr. Caver was our head of our operations, so I can ask him personally, and I can email you back. I'd be happy to.
Okay, thank you.
Councilwoman Conwell.
Through the chair to my colleague, I met with Dr. Caver, and he agreed, and I think he laid out some other reasonings besides the track the other day. And just on that note, so Khalil has the notes from that meeting, but in terms of that, to actually see how the rails are deteriorating, I believe we're setting up a tour for all of council if they want to on a Friday, working on actually riding the rails and seeing the difference between the light rail system and the what is the other one called? Heavy.
The heavy is much more like what we think of, like the Tommy the train and those traditional trains. And I also think would be infrastructure problem as far as entering and exiting the train. So like if you look at in Shaker Square how you get off the train, you actually step off. So, and the other trains are higher, so we would have to also be retrofitting all the platforms.
So my question to you, Ms. Moss, is RTA using a national service to find the new GM?
Yes, K&A, they are a national firm that really specializes in transportation, but we're casting a very wide net. Not only are we doing the traditional places like APTA, the National Transportation Organization, but we are also going to be trying to tap into some other county and mayor and city search sites so that we're going to. I think the thought is on the board, it would be terrific if we could have someone come here who knew a lot about transportation and were an expert in the field. But we don't want to preclude that if there's someone else who would be a terrific fit, and that we certainly do have a lot of expertise within RTA about the running of a system. So if if someone's skill set is so terrific in a different way, we would consider taking someone outside of transportation.
Okay, and how are you going to handle relocation fees? Or if
I think that's negotiable. I think that's certainly in the past that on the high-level positions that we have given relocation fees.
Okay, thank you.
Councilman Jones.
K&A.
Do you have a timeline for the search? When do you expect?
Okay, so today was the presentation for the job description, and it is a long, detailed description, and I actually have a copy of it here from our meeting. And they, from there, we're having our public comment. The plan is to start advertising on Monday. And the search firm has recommended 60 days for which us to do the search. And then the next step will be within like a week after that, or 2 weeks, depending on, we have to be able to schedule a special meeting. It will be the search committee, and a lot of our ad hoc committees are done on the basis of making sure that all the appointing authorities are represented. So there's 3 of us on this committee. I'm on it for the council, or for the county, and we have someone from the city's appointment, and then there's someone from the mayor's there. And we will go through those after they've been vetted by the KNA, the search firm. We will hopefully be able to narrow it from 8 to 10, and we'll bring them in for interviews. And hopefully we would do that within a month or 2 weeks after doing that. And then we would bring the final few. We're not limiting it. It may be 2, it may be 3, it may be 4, back to Cleveland. And at that time, I think that those people will it will be known, and we will have them go around and be able to meet with the stakeholders and our appointing authorities to get their input as well. So I think the goal right now is to finish this by July. But to be honest, when we started this search process last August or September, we thought we would be here by March. So the goal is July.
Once the search committee or national team brings the few in, will they recommend one, or will you choose from amongst?
I think
few
that
that
the board will vote amongst those, that at that point, the search committee will kind of step by, because this is the most important thing we do, by the way. We only have one other person who reports to us, and that's the auditor. And this is the vision, this is the most important person, and it's the most important job. So at that point, I think it's really important that the board all has input and a buy-in, and I don't think that the 3 people on the search committee would think that it would be our place to make one recommendation.
Okay. And you said there are 3 on the,
Yes.
when it's time for the vote, how many, remind me the number on the board?
Well, we have 10 on the board. We have 1 seat has not been, there's an open seat on the mayor has 1 appointment.
So there are 10 currently,
Well, no, there's 9 currently.
9 currently. Oh, but 10 in total? I'm used to odd numbers.
So
every
yeah, it is a
10
little
tie,
odd.
yeah.
So we have 3 appointees are by the council, in the county. There's 4 from the city, and then there's 3 from the mayors. So there's 10. It is a little bit odd.
Do you deal with ties? How do you, does that
So,
happen?
no, I mean, we have, so some things have to be done by majority, if we're, a couple of things, like when we vote for the president. But I don't know, and I've been on since 2011, that we've ever had a tie. A tie would mean it wouldn't pass.
Right.
It was an odd way that it was ever set up, and that it was, if it had been equal distribution, there would be 3, 3, and 3. But when we were set up, the city has 4 appointments, and there's actually, I'm the city's appointment, so the county council and the executive have to have 1 person sitting on the board that's actually a resident of Cleveland.
For city of Cleveland, and how many for county?
So you have 3 appointments, and one of those 3 has to live in the city.
Okay. I guess I'm still kind of hung up on the potential for, with 10 votes, you know. what
It
happens?
is potential, but I think what would happen in a tie is the resolution would not pass. So that would be really the same as a no vote.
Okay, it's obviously it's probably a small possibility, but
It certainly is a possibility.
if it happens,
Yeah, you certainly could have almost like a gridlock
Right. If it's not a recommendation of one and you vote that one up and down and then go to the next,
My understanding is when the charter of the organization, this was something, and it's not a bylaws thing, it's not something we can change. It would have to be the city and the county and the mayors would have to get together and change our charter, so it really isn't up to us.
okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I had a couple of questions. You touched on land transition during your opening remarks. Can you give us a little bit more insight on that?
Well, today is actually, this is also being presented at our committee meeting today. We're doing, it's a TOD where it's, and some of you probably have heard this because there is also, we have the people for public transit and then we have people for the Greenway that are very vocal in their opposition, but we're entering an agreement with Carnegie Management. It's being recommended to the full board, we heard in committee today, is about some development around the 25th station. So there is some big development going on. The shopping center coming down and building some mixed-use housing and commercial. And part of that is, and we don't own that land, but we do own land around our station, and of course the Greenway that is, it's going to be a mixed-use trail that goes from just past the 25th station to Columbus Road, and it goes all the way out to St. Ignatius, the parish. And that is a development that we've entered into with the county and the Metro Parks, and they have gotten a Tiger grant to do that, and they have agreed to maintain it. But there's a piece of it right by the 25th Street station that we are entering an agreement to develop that land, and that is something that's just kind of it's right now on the table, and it's non-binding agreement. First of all, it's going before, so it was in committee, it's going to the board I think it's the 25th of March. And we will, if we enter the agreement, it's a non-binding agreement for its development. And it's important when we do this that we do it right.
Okay, so just for clarity, the board composition that we spoke about is 3, 3, and 4. So 3 from the county executive, 3 from the mayor, and 4, or is it 3 from, can you, again,
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Okay, so we have 4 city appointments that the mayor and city council appoint.
Mayor and city council.
Yes, well, it's sort of the same deal as here is I think that the mayor makes a recommendation and city council approves them.
Okay.
So there are 4 from the city, and then there are 3 from the county, and then the mayors have 3, and they seem to only appoint mayors.
So
Through
when you
the
say
chair.
mayors, like mayors and
Yeah,
managers?
through the chair, do you mind if I speak? Just living this in the last few months, just 3 from the city of Cleveland, 3 from the county executive, and then the 4 from mayors and managers group, is that correct? or-
No, there's 4 from the city, it doesn't, not me.
4
Like
from the
this-
city, right.
So there's
4.
actually 4 from the cities, right now is Reverend Lucas, Leo Serrano, Valerie McCall, and there's an MTC.
And an opening. So just to repeat, 4 from the city of Cleveland, 1 opening currently,
Okay.
3 from the county. The reappointment here would confirm and we'd be finished for a few years. And then 3 from the other mayors across the county, but they're mayors and managers group, which are elected
And,
by them, we have nothing to do with
right, you
that.
just hold, I think the county
We
controls
were
the
responsible
election.
for hosting the election.
And what I would add is they're all kind of rolling appointments. So the people that you appointed early, or I guess that was technically in 2018, they were appointed to unexpired terms. So someone will come up for approval every year for you.
Okay, all right, that's helpful, thank you. I hope
I
that
think that's
clears
maybe
it up
why they're
for-
3-year appointments.
Okay, I just wanted to just make sure that we had an understanding of the breakdown, because I think at one point it felt like the city had the bulk, and they do, while they have a good portion, I think with mayors and managers, which consists of our suburban communities, that should be made clear for the record. So the
Yes.
mayors and managers
Yes.
are a collective group of the suburban mayors around the city of Cleveland that have electing authority for their members. And while we have appointing authority for the other members.
And if I may, through the chair, the representatives that have come through for mayors and managers include Westlake Mayor, Mayor Clough, South Euclid Mayor, Mayor Wheelo, sorry, and most recently Mayor Burns from Parma Heights.
Okay,
So there shows you a little bit of the entire county supports. The counties does need one resident of Cleveland on their appointment, and that would be Ms. Moss. That said, Terry Joyce also resides in Cleveland.
and I guess the other question I would have, and I'll throw it out to either of you, but Director Pomerantz, you might have a little bit more insight as to the city of Cleveland appointments. Are they all required to be residents of the city as well?
Yes.
Correct.
Okay, all
Yes.
right, thank you. The other question that I would ask, do my colleagues have any other questions on that subject? Okay, fine. The question I would present to you with regards to, as we talk about collaboration, do you work with any of the other neighboring counties? I know right now jobs are sprawling through, cities like Twinsburg and things of that nature. So do we collaborate with our neighboring counties as far as coordination of schedules or anything along those lines?
I think we enjoy a good relationship with them, and I think there is a lot of dialogue. And I may actually refer to Jose, but there's like Lake County. I think that we do some very specific joint things. That there is a good relationship, and the county, our county, takes a leadership role. So I think there is some coordination of schedules, and we certainly give them space to load and unload.
And I guess one of the other questions that I would have with the competition of things like Lyft and Uber, can you speak to how it has impacted your ridership, if at all?
I think it has. I mean, I don't think there's any definitive, but I think that it was something like, so when you were talking about strategic plans, and we're in the middle of actually five pillar plans, looking at these, so I think maybe we'll get some more specific data, but I think that we certainly have experienced some loss in ridership, and I think that definitely Lyft and Uber have affected that. And I also think that we ourselves are using some of that for some of our, we're doing some experimental things for our less disabled paratransit.
All right, well, that concludes my line of questioning. If there are no further questions, comments, or concerns from the committee, I know that the state, I think the ORC provides for your appointment to carry on, but I would imagine that it is the request of the administration to move this on second reading suspension.
That is correct.
Okay, so I'll make the motion to move this under second reading suspension. Do I have a second? It's been moved in second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Ms. Moss, thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
No, thank you. Thank you for your willingness to serve and all of your knowledge and experience that you bring to this position and sharing that with us today. So I appreciate
Thank you. I appreciate being here.
All right, with no further delay, we're going to move on back to the regularly scheduled program of our agenda, and I'll turn it over to the council clerk if you'll read the first item that we have into the record.
Resolution number 2019-0051, adopting various changes to the Cuyahoga County non-bargaining classification plan.
Mr. Buchanan, if you'll state your name and what you have before us today.
Good morning, Madam Chairwoman, members of the committee. I'm Albert Bushaheen, the Manager of Classification and Compensation for the Personnel Review Commission. Before you for your consideration are modifications to the county's non-bargaining classification plan. These changes in departments' operational needs, routine maintenance necessitate the creation of 3 new classifications, the revision of 6 classifications, and the deletion of 2 classifications. All the modifications before you were prepared by the PRC class and comp staff, who has worked extensively with the Department of Human Resources and county management teams to ensure that they're fully informed of the proposed changes before you. In accordance with the PRC rules, the proposed changes were posted on the PRC's website prior to your consideration. The PRC considered and approved recommending these changes at their February 6, 2000 meeting. I thank you for your consideration. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
All right, thank you very much. I think a question that comes before you quite often is any financial impact.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, there is no financial impact, although there is one classification that is being reduced in pay grade because some of the duties have been pulled out and created a separate classification. That incumbent salary falls within the new pay grade that's been assigned, so there is no financial impact to the employee.
Okay. And how many incumbents are we dealing with the presentation for the revisions and deletions? I'm imagining you have none in the deleted category.
That is correct. None of the proposed deletions have any incumbents in those. With respect to the revised, the Senior Development Finance Analyst, which is going to be called the Economic and Community Development Program Specialist, I believe there are 2 incumbents. There is no financial impact there. I do not have specific numbers as to the forensic scientist, but I'll be happy to email those numbers to you. The HRIS administrator is a classification that was formerly, that is going to be called payroll, time and attendance. There is 1 incumbent, and again, although that is a new pay grade, there is no financial impact to the employee. And the payroll and time and attendance is 1 incumbent as well.
All right, thank you very much. And then finally, I think you said there are 3 new positions, or 3 new classifications, I should say. How many positions do we anticipate will come from those new classifications?
Madam Chair, my understanding is that these are single incumbent positions. The tax collection manager and the senior talent acquisition and employment specialists are vacant positions. Once and if they become active classifications, the departments will post and recruit for those positions. The manager, time and attendance is a position also that is currently vacant, but the department will be reassigning an employee that is currently performing those duties.
All right, thank you very much. I'll open it up to my colleagues if there are any questions, comments, or concerns. Okay, it looks like there are none. So with that said, how would you like for us to proceed?
Madam Chair, there are no pressing or time-sensitive changes that I'm presenting today, so I am reserving the right and not asking for second reading suspension at this time.
We're grateful for that. All right, so we'll move this to the full body of the council under 3 readings. Do I have a second? Second. All right, it's been moved in second. If there are no questions, comments, or concerns, all in favor, please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much. Council Clerk, if you'll read the next item into the record.
Resolution number 2019-0052, adopting various changes to the Cuyahoga County non-bargaining salary schedules A and B.
Madam Chair, Albert Bouchahine again with the Personnel Review Commission. The PRC is requesting modifications to the county's non-bargaining salary schedules. The PRC and HR on behalf of the county executive has engaged in discussions for quite some time regarding the elimination of the steps in the pay grades and a change in practice of increasing each step of the salary schedule by whatever wage increase was granted to the employees, and this year happened to be 2%. The PRC is supportive of the elimination of steps in the pay grades as it will provide for increased management flexibility and discretion in initial hiring and promotion decisions, thereby enhancing the county's ability to compete for talent. Moreover, this change will also help reduce employee expectations that salaries should necessarily increase as a result of staying in the same position year after year without any assessment of performance. The second proposed change is a change in practice, not written policy. The administration has requested that we retain the minimums and the maximums of the pay grades while non-bargaining employees are granted a 2% wage increase. Although this is a change in past practice, the PRC carefully reviewed and considered data provided by the HR department that indicates that the county's pay rates, except for IT positions, appear to be competitive. Therefore, the PRC supports this change and the retention of the minimums and maximums for 2019. I want to note that the PRC supports this change for 2019 only, as we intend to conduct a salary survey to examine comparable salaries for benchmark positions in the county's class plan. And we also intend to share that information with the Department of Human Resources. Thank you again, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Rhonda Caldwell, HR's Manager of Compensation, is also here in the audience and available to answer any questions you may have as well.
Refresh me a little bit. We talked a little bit about this last year with the steps. So can you kind of give us an overview of maybe like how the steps used to work and what we're moving towards?
Correct. Madam
Okay.
Chair, members of the committee, currently we have two salary schedules, Schedule A and then Schedule B, which is specifically for IT classifications. Each schedule has a different number of grades. There are 30 currently in Schedule A, and I believe 19 or 20 in Schedule B. There are 17 steps on each schedule with a 40% spread from Step 1, which is the minimum of a pay grade, to Step 17. In past years, there has been no mechanism to move employees along the steps. The past practice of the county has always been to allow for a cost of living increase. When that happened, we would take specific steps to just increase each step of the pay grade, which really resulted in people staying at whatever step they were at and not moving along the pay grade. So they wouldn't really penetrate into the pay range. They'd essentially just stay right where they're at. With this methodology, we would eliminate these steps by, number one, it would eliminate people's expectations that there is a longevity-based system rather than a performance-based system, and allow people, as the county issues either a cost of living or a general wage increase, to do a wage study, a market study, and decide whether our minimums, maximums are competitive and adjusting them that way. Rather than, again, the expectation that employees would move based on longevity because of steps, the county would initiate, and I don't want to speak for Rhonda, but I believe they're a couple years off, but they've introduced a performance management system in the human services area, which they intend to cross over and make countywide within the next couple of years. So people would be able to advance based on performance rather than on the expectation of longevity. It would also give the employer, the county executives administration, the ability to bring people in at different areas within the pay range rather than be restricted to whatever step the midpoint is at that time.
Okay, and with that said, this is a county-wide initiative, is that correct?
That is correct. It only affects, Madam Chair, non-bargaining employees.
Non-bargaining, and just for the record, can you give us an estimate of how many of the employees are non-bargaining that would be impacted by this?
There are currently approximately 1,400 employees under the county executives administrations and agencies.
All right, and you mentioned human services. Is there a prioritized list or of departments that this methodology would be applicable to? Because it sounded like we're going to be kind of phasing it in.
Madam Chair, members of the committee, this would be applicable to all agencies. My reference to HHS had to do with the performance management system
Okay.
that the administration has piloted at the HHS agencies, but then we'll be expanding it to cover all the other agencies under the county executive.
Okay, thank you. Are there any questions from my colleagues? Councilman Jones?
Just for clarity, are the 17 steps still in place for the performance, or is there a new mechanism or step process?
Madam Chair, Councilman, with the elimination of the steps, they would be gone. All you'll see left is a minimum. Although we display a midpoint, it's a minimum and a maximum. So when there are performance-related wage adjustments, that would be more by percentages rather than a step.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councilman Miller?
So the employees are getting a 2% COLA, but you're not changing the schedule for this year, so that means that the employees are gonna move up within the range. Is that correct?
Well, Madam Chair, to Councilman Miller, I think there's a debate otherwise whether you approved a 2% COLA or some in the administration may want to referred to as a general wage increase. The decision to not move the minimums and maximums was based on a market study that the HR department had conducted and found that our positions, except for the IT positions, were competitive with respect to the midpoint. So I guess to answer your question is employees would stay where they're at within the pay range, although they received a 2% general wage increase.
Madam Chair, Mr. Bouchahine, I don't understand that answer. If the minimums stay the same, I mean, suppose somebody's at the minimum. They get a 2% increase. You don't change the minimum so that they're no longer at the minimum because they've moved 2% above the minimum. So they're now not at the very end of the range. They're within the range, closer to the low point, but not at the low point. Am I right, or am I missing something?
Madam Chair, Councilman, I apologize for the explanation, didn't make sense. They would have received the 2%, as you stated correctly. They would no longer be at the minimum because we didn't increase it. They would be just off of the minimum. So there is some range penetration for that employee.
Okay, fine. That's what I thought. The other question I had is that since you said that we're competitive except in IT, did we change the schedule on IT?
Madam Chair, Councilman, we did not at this point, but and I don't want to speak again, Ms. Caldwell can correct me, is my understanding is because they have the ability to start employees or employees that are promoted anywhere between the range, they're finding that a lot of the employees are coming in, or we're bringing them in at salaries beyond the midpoint, which is traditionally considered the market.
Understood. Okay.
Are there any further questions, comments, or concerns from the committee? If there are none, I'll ask you, how would you like for us to proceed?
Madam Chair, normal council process is fine.
All right, so I'll make a motion to move this to the full body of the council under 3 readings. Do I have a second?
Second.
It's been moved in second. If there's
Madam-
yes, sir.
Just a comment. That I think this is a significant and positive step. I think the step system created expectations which in fact didn't happen, and added complexity and didn't contribute to morale. And I think this gives you a chance to create a new system where people have realistic expectations. They know how the evaluation system is going to work. If we do this next step right, I think it can be better. So I approve of it and wish you the best.
Thank you.
I think we can echo Councilman Miller's sentiments. Since being privileged to serve as the chair, this has been an ongoing topic. So if there are no further questions, comments, or concerns, then I'll ask if all are in favor to please say aye. Aye. All right, thank you very much.
Thank you.
This item will move to the full body of the council for 3 readings. And is there any miscellaneous business from my colleagues? There being none, this meeting is adjourned.